Hey guys, what's going on? It's Adam, the science tutor. Today we're going to be covering the arteries of the abdominal cavity. I'm going to give you guys the anastomosis of the different arteries and what's going where and the different trunks and how it's easier to recognize what to do. If you guys are able to draw this out comfortably, you'll do phenomenal on your exam. So to start things out, we have a couple different branches in the heart. So we're going to have the aorta up here. Aorta, the heart. This is going to be the abdominal aorta. Aorta. And then we're going to have our three branches. This is going to be in the abdominal wall. So this is what you're going to look for in here if you're doing a cadaver or if you're looking for the starting points. We're going to have the celiac trunk. We're going to have the celiac trunk. That's going to be our first branch. We're going to have the superior mesenteric. A dot would be for artery. So superior mesenteric artery, and the inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, so we have the celiac trunk, superior mesenteric artery, and then the inferior mesenteric artery. The celiac trunk is going to supply blood for the foregut. The superior mesenteric artery is going to supply blood for the midgut. And the inferior mesenteric artery is going to supply blood for the hindgut. So this is the top of our body. These aren't legs, but if you can imagine it, the top of your body goes from the aorta, abdominal aorta, down to the celiac trunk, superior mesenteric artery, and the inferior mesenteric artery. So the celiac trunk, it'll have three branches off of it, and this is almost immediately off of it. So we have three branches. Celiac trunk is going to supply blood for the foregut, so that's going to be supplying like your liver, your spleen, your part of your stomach. So the first branch we're going to draw is going to be called our common hepatic artery. Common hepatic artery. Hepatic is kind of our nickname for our liver. So common hepatic artery. We're going to also have the splenic artery. So I said that the celiac trunk is going to supply blood for the spleen, so the splenic artery is going to go to our spleen. Our common hepatic artery is not going to go towards, it's going to go towards the direction of the liver, but it's not going to attach at the liver. And then we have one more. It's going to be our left gastric artery. Gastric is a nickname for stomach. So our left gastric artery. Cool. So our left gastric artery, common hepatic artery, and splenic artery, all off the celiac trunk. The common hepatic artery is going to have a couple branches. So it's going to have our proper hepatic artery, So it's going to be celiac trunk, common hepatic artery, proper hepatic artery. It's also going to have two more. We're going to have the Duodenal artery. And we're going to have our right gastric artery. So our right gastric artery is coming off our hepatic artery. We also have then we're going to have our branch for a proper hepatic artery, which is going to go closer to our liver, and then the gastroduodenal. So if we break up this word, gastro, stomach, duodenal, so it's going to be going towards our stomach and our duodenum. So it's going to go kind of straight down. And I'm going to draw the anastomosis. So I don't know if you guys remember or recall from last time, but anastomosis is where two arteries come and connect. So we're going to have the left and right gastric artery are going to anastomose with one another. And it's going to kind of go off towards the esophagus. Left gastric artery will kind of have a branch. It'll be the esophageal branch, but we're not going to worry about that. Coming off the gastroduodenal artery, we're gonna have a couple guys. So we're gonna have our superior duodenal artery, and this is just the singular artery off the duodenum. It's going to be superior, so superior duodenal artery. And we're also going to have our right gastroomental artery. We have our gastroomental artery. Excuse me, I misdrew this one right here. And then we're going to have off the right gastroomental artery, we're going to have our superior. And I'm going to draw this, it's almost like a 2-in-1, anterior and posterior. Posterior pancreaticoduodenal artery. So once again, if you break down this word, pancreatico, so pancreas, duodenal, so it's above the duodenum, and it's on the pancreas kind of, so superior pancreaticoduodenal artery. Off the right gastroomental artery. If you break this down, gastro for stomach, omental is for omentum, so it's almost like a muscle layer that covers the abdominal organs. Some organs aren't covered, but it's either peritoneal or retroperitoneal organs. So this kind of wraps it up for our gastroduodenal, an extremely important artery, and coming off the common hepatic artery. So the proper hepatic artery, it's still heading up towards the liver. So it's going to have 3 branches. So we're going to have our left and right hepatic arteries. These are going right into our liver. And then you're also going to have your cystic artery. Cystic artery is going into our gallbladder. So cystic for gallbladder. Cool, pretty much almost done with our celiac trunk. We have one more, the splenic artery. Splenic artery is going to have, guys, it's going to have our short gastric branches. Our short gastric branches, and it's also going to have our left gastroomental artery. And what do we know? So it's left and right gastroomental arteries. So in most cases, the left and right will anastomose with one another. In this case, it will. So we're going to have anastomosis right here. And so if you think about it, the gastroduodenal is going down. So you're going to have the right gastroomental coming across. The splenic artery goes across. And then it's going to have the left gastroomental artery coming across, and it's going to anastomose with one another. So this is going to be on our stomach, and it's going to supply both our omentum, our lesser omentum, and our gastric or our stomach. Short gastric branches, they're just going to be supplying the stomach as well. Splenic artery is going to supply the spleen. So we're finished here with the celiac trunk. This is probably the most complicated area, and there's a lot of things going everywhere. But really all you need to know is the 3 primary branches off the celiac trunk, and then the common hepatic artery is going to supply a lot of different things. Gastroduodenal is probably the most important from there. Then that's where we get down to our superior pancreaticoduodenal, and that's going to anastomose with something from the superior mesenteric artery. So the superior mesenteric artery is going to have a couple of branches, quite a few branches really. So on 4 branches. I'm just going to get this one out of the way. We're going to have the inferior. So inferior, and then I'm conjoining these 2 as well. Anterior dash posterior, because we're going to have 2 different sides on both the posterior and anterior side. Inferior, anterior, posterior, pancreaticoduodenal. Duodenal artery, and I know it looks like a scary word, but if you break it up, it's really not that bad. Pancreatico, because pancreas, duodenal, on the duodenum, it's inferior, so it's lower than the superior, which makes sense because the celiac trunk is superior to the superior mesenteric artery. These 2 are going to anastomose with one another. Cool. Now, they like to say superior mesenteric artery. Another good way to remember some of the things that are coming off of it is MRI. MRI. So we have our middle colic, our right colic, and our iliocolic. So I'm not going to draw it. I can draw it in that exact order, I guess. So we're going to have the middle colic artery, middle colic artery, our right colic artery, and then our iliocolic artery. So we have our iliocolic artery, our middle colic artery, and our right colic artery, MRI. So our middle colic artery is going to have a branch, and it's going to go to the marginal artery of Drummond. Marginal artery of Drummond. And this is going to, superior mesenteric artery is going to supply most of the ascending and the transverse colon. So it's going to supply the ascending and transverse colon. Marginal artery of Drummond is going to go all the way around the transverse colon and kind of down the descending colon. So then we have the right colic artery. Right colic artery is going to hang out kind of by itself. It's going to supply the ascending colon. And then we have the iliocolic artery, and it's going to supply our ilium, our jejunum, and our cecum. So you're going to have a couple of branches from here. We're going to have our ilio, and I'm going to also add on to here jejunum, and these are just branches, ilial and jejunum branches. And then we're going to have our, because it's going to supply the cecum too, so we're going to have our anterior and posterior cecal arteries. So anterior, posterior, cecal arteries. Then our last one, probably our more important, I want to say more important, but it supplies the appendix as well, so it's going to have an appendage artery. So our versiform appendix, which is off the cecum, is going to get supplied from the iliocolic through the appendage artery. So that's done with the superior mesenteric artery. So now we have the inferior mesenteric artery, which is going to supply more the descending colon, the sigmoid, and the rectum. So inferior mesenteric artery, running out of room. We're going to have, so let's see, so we have the marginal artery of Drummond. We did the middle colic, the right colic, and the iliocolic, but where's the left colic? So that'll be our first branch off our inferior mesenteric artery. So it's going to be the left colic artery. And the left colic artery, this is kind of the misnomer or the kind of the confusing step. So left colic artery is going to anastomose with the marginal artery of Drummond, not with the right colic artery. So the right colic artery is going to supply the ascending colon. The left colic artery is going to supply the descending colon, and it's going to anastomose with the marginal artery of Drummond, because the marginal artery of Drummond is coming off the transverse colon and down the descending colon. So left colic artery. Then we're going to have the sigmoid arteries. So sigmoid arteries, there's going to be 4 branches. So that's kind of like a key to look for, is there's 4 of them. Sigmoid artery, and then we have our last one. So we said that the inferior mesenteric artery supplies the descending colon, the sigmoid, and the rectum. So it's going to be, only makes sense, we've already supplied the sigmoid artery, we supplied the descending colon. So what's left? The rectal artery. I need to move this board up. This is ridiculous. Makes it hard to write. But rectal artery. Oh, sorry. Superior rectal artery. So superior rectal artery. So it'll be the superior on top of the rectum. You're also going to have a middle and inferior rectal artery, but that's not from our inferior mesenteric artery. So cool. That is pretty much the basis of what we're covering. So the anastomoses are here, left gastric artery, anastomosis with the right gastric artery. The right gastroomental artery is going to anastomose with the left gastroomental artery. superior and inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery is going to anastomose with one another, and the left colic artery and the marginal artery of Drummond are going to anastomose with one another. So if you continue down, we're not going to cover this today, but the abdominal aorta then will actually bifurcate. So it'll bifurcate, and it'll become the common iliac artery, and then the common iliac arteries on both of your legs will then bifurcate again and become the external and internal iliac arteries. But that's another video. That's more the pelvis, blood supply, and we're not going to worry about that. But take a picture of this. You guys should be able to draw this out. If you can draw this out, you will be A-okay for test time covering the arteries of the abdominal cavity. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please watch it. Please subscribe, watch, like the video, and share it. Thank you guys.